Ivan Pavlenko, From Family to Family. Chapter 1, Appeal to Descendants. Read by Natalia Buzova. To Natasha and Denise. 1. This is the main copy of my family memories. It must be kept to yourselves in 2 books. 2. The second copy in 2 yellow books can be given to someone from relatives, Grisha's sons Vova, Vitya, Yurik, or Vovka's Dima, as they get married. 3. I would like to give to Victor's Seryoja in the Camera region if he shows up. February the 2nd, 1999, Ivan Pavlenko's signature. Continuation is in another book. I have long wanted to write something for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren about our pedigree and the times in which we happen to live. I wanted them to know where their roots came from, what their grandparents were like, and how they lived. For the last 70 years, such a breakdown of the social and spiritual foundations of life has taken place, which has mixed once settled people, scattered them everywhere, causing the weakening of family ties and partial loss of some moral values, including honor and respect for rural workers, love for native land, to people, their traditions, love and culture. This long-standing intention of mine was accelerated by the perestroika initiated in our country at the initiative of the upper classes, who responded in time to the cries of the lower classes and opened the vent for democracy and publicity. Society seems to have woken up after a long hypnotic fear that has gripped it since 1917. Today, everything and everywhere spoke, as if something hot had burst from a sore chest, from a long and seemingly tightly sealed soul. Newspapers and magazines shout, squares and streets roar. I was also drawn to this confession. I think that a return to the Stalinist stereotype of life is no longer possible. That is why one should not be afraid of a free, true word spoken or written. Here I address it to children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. As you know, each new generation rises higher in its development due to the fact that through science and life practice learns the experience of previous generations. This process is multifaceted and complex. It follows the line of sciences, one might say, without theoretical dislocations and brain training on the part of the ruling elite. After all, it is difficult to deny that if 2 is multiplied by 2, there will be 4. Humanitarian knowledge is formed in a different way. Here, in a fierce duel, the universal laws of development converge with overt or covert lawlessness, with the desire to unify man to the level of a program robot. On this basis, pseudoscience often flourishes, which breeds spiritual cripples and chameleons, and they reproduce their own kind and distort our history to please tyrants and adventurers who came to power. That is why it is difficult to recognize the truth of life from modern textbooks. Even children understand that teachers tell them one thing at school and the surrounding reality they see is quite different. The inconsistency of word and deed, the proclamation of idea, and what we see in life is the wormhole that erodes our society. Ideological slogans became a convenient cover for the nomenclature bureaucracy, which stood out in a privileged caste, detached from the people. For 70 years, our supreme rulers, from Lenin and Stalin to Brezhnev, proclaimed from the high rostrum the rapid approach of the pink communist era and called for its triumph to work, to sacrifice, to endure hardships. Khrushchev even set the boundaries when we will overtake America and live under communism. But the promised deadlines passed, and the reality of life became more and more hopeless, and all-encompassing crisis of the whole system was approaching. And from the lips of the last General Secretary of the Central Committee of the CPSU, Gorbachev, it was acknowledged that with the construction of the Stalinist model of socialism, we were in fact near the broken trough. As you know, the fullest life is reflected in fiction. From the works of, for example, Nechuy Levitsky, Panas Myrny, Boris Hrinchenko, we learn unmistakably about the life and customs of their pre-revolutionary Ukrainian village. But many books of the Soviet era with a great stretch can be called true. Even Sholokhov in The Raised Virgin Land had to compromise with Stalinism in his portrayal of collectivization. Something similar can be said about Holovkov's Weeds and Mikitenko's dictatorship. And what to say about such later advertised masterpieces of socialist realism as In the Steppes of Ukraine by Kornichuk, Happiness by Pavlenko, Night of the Golden Star by Babayevsky, and many others. It seems to me that the revolution and the civil war are more or less truthfully reflected in Sholokhov's Silent Dawn and Tolstoy's trilogy Walking in Torches, and the patriotic war in The Living and the Dead and Soldiers Are Not Born by Simonov. No one has yet truthfully described the era of the construction of Stalin's barracks socialism. And what was published in 70 years is permeated with false state patriotic pathos. In fact, that period of our history was tragic, cruel, and terrible. Only in recent years have such true works as novels by Solzhenitsyn, Pasternak, and Dudintsev, and memoirs of convicts in Stalin's camps begun to reach us. The interest of the younger generation in our past began to grow. Thus, it strives for knowledge, self-improvement, and self-determination. That is why I want to tell my grandchildren and great-grandchildren the truth, and only the truth, so that they do not repeat our mistakes. Do not blindly rely on ready-made formulas of life, no matter how outwardly dotted and attractive, but critically comprehend them and correctly define their place and their role in life. I happened to believe endlessly and despair, to rush forward and fall, to bruise my forehead and carry them in my soul. And perhaps from everything I have experienced and learned, something will come in handy for my descendants. I think they will also be interested to pick up and read what their grandfather or great-grandfather left behind. The further away from our time, the more interesting it will be. Therefore, I would like these memories to be preserved as a relay race for our family. And if someone as restless and as not indifferent as I am happens in our family, let him rewrite or reprint these faded pages. Congratulations to you, my close and distant descendants. Be insightful and wise in life, with a good and noble soul, with love in your heart for your homeland. Let your life be such that you want to live. Happiness to you, health, and infallible mind for all good and eternal. 1990, Kyiv, your great ancestor, Ivan Pavlenko.